What's up everyone, welcome to Kai's channel. Today we'll be doing a comparison between the Aile Strike Gundam and the Strike Gundam alternative version of Metal Build. As Bandai will be releasing the sword and the launcher strike pack very soon, and some of you might be wondering, just like I did, what is the actual difference between the two? Why did Metal Build actually came out with another one? Is there any difference at all? And here today we'll be telling you just how much of a difference, if there's any, between the two. So let's get right into it. So starting with the box, you have on the left, it's the old Strike Gundam, which comes with the Aile Strike backpack as well. And you can see that on the front cover. And on the right, it's the alternative version, which there is actually a cover to it, which you can see at the back of it. And it goes on top of the box. So this is how you usually would be able to tell the difference between the two. You have the Metal Build Infinity logo right there on the top, on the cover. And then at the bottom, it says Metal Build Alternative Strike in Japanese. So that's a really quick way to differentiate the two. So coming right out of the box, here is the first layer between the two. Now on the left, it is the Aile Striker Gundam, which is the old version. And on the right, it is the new version, the alternative version. Clearly, you can see a major difference, which is that the Aile Striker backpack is missing on the new one, which is pretty obvious. They did state that this one does not come with the Aile Striker backpack. So don't be alarmed on there. But other than that, it's pretty much whatever it has on the old version, the alternative version will have it the same. So right here, you can see the shield. You have it on the old version, and you have here on the alternative version. Same goes with the spare antenna, which is right here on the old one. And the new one's right here. And then you have the small knife, which is the Armor Schneider. It's right here on the old one and here on the new one. And then there's obviously the rifle, which you see on the new one right here on the first layer, but it's not on the first layer for the old version. It's actually on the second layer, which I can show you later. The white piece here at the bottom on the old version is the base stand for the Aile Striker backpack. So again, it's no surprise that it is not on the alternate version. So we move on to the second layer. So here's the second layer. Basically, both of them is just for the base stands. You have the rifle here on the old one, like I mentioned, it's on the second level. And the rest of it is pretty much the same for both of them. You have the beam saber effect at the bottom of the old version, which explains why, because the new alternate version doesn't have the beam saber. It should be with the Aile Striker backpack. And at the bottom, there's a smaller stand right there. That's also for displaying the Aile Striker backpack. So again, it's not on the alternate version. But aside from that, there is one notable difference, which is the joint connector for the display stand, which is right here. It's transparent on the old one, and on the new one, it's in gray. And there's actually one more piece there that goes on top of it for the alternate version, which I'll explain a little more later in the video. So here it is, the Strike Gundam's main body next to each other. At a first glance, you can probably say that they're both identically the same, which is true when I first glanced at it, although there are some parts of the decals that you can tell it's different. But aside from that, it is identically the same. Or so you thought. There is actually some difference between the two, which is very minor. So minor that you probably can't even tell the difference unless I tell you otherwise. So, what are the differences? Here they are. One is the antenna. The color on the antenna on both of them is actually different. The gold on the old version, it's actually a little pale compared to the new one. And it's not as gold as the alternate version would be. If you take a look on the alternate version, the gold strikes out more. And this is probably not because that the old version has came out quite some time ago and the colors start fading out. That's not the case, because the old version that I have, I've kept it in the box and I haven't taken it out at all. I haven't even displayed it. It's completely new and I just taken it out since I last checked it. So it's definitely not because of a fading of color. The second color difference is the main body, the blue on the main body. On the old one, it's a very strong blue and it's somewhat metallic color, but the sparkle in there, it's not as apparent as the new one. Whereas the new one is clearly, you have the metallic blue that's with the sparkle underneath it, which stands out really clearly. But if you look closely, the new ones, it's actually a little bit towards purple than it is blue if you compare the two next to each other. On the old one, it's pure blue. No matter whichever angle you're looking at, it's still blue. But on the alternative version, if you look at it at a particular angle or under different lightings, there are times that you can see it's more purple than it is blue. Now this is not something that's too critical, it doesn't bother me at all, but it's another one of those things that it's different that I've noticed. And it's probably not going to bother anyone at all. The third difference is the red on the torso. The red on the torso on the old version, it's a metallic red. Again, as the sparkle is not as apparent as the blue like I mentioned, but it's still trying to be a metallic red. However, on the alternative version, this is not the case. From what I've noticed, the red on the alternative version, it's matte red, except for the centerpiece cockpit part. However, again, it's not too critical. If I didn't tell you, you probably didn't even notice that's the case. But aside from these coloring differences, both of them are actually the same in terms of coloring. Both of them still have the two tones of white on it. You got the pure white, which is on the majority of the pieces, and then you have a slightly different white, which is the rice white on some of the pieces. And the two tones of white is the same on the old and the new version, so nothing particular on that. And then you have on the decals. Decals, you can tell the old version actually has more than it is on the new one. The new one doesn't have it, but the old one has it on its right shoulder, which we can see it on the left. It has the Omni logo on there. And then you have on the thigh armor, you have that red design right across there. So it actually looks a lot more details on the old one than it is on the new one. But then again, some people don't like a lot of decals, so it's really up to your preference. So in terms of movement wise, both of them moves exactly the same. You have the shoulder piece that actually opens upwards and the flap opens up as well, which is probably for the sword and launcher strike shoulder parts, and both of these can do it, it's the same. But as I was playing around with it, I do notice another difference. Now I'm not sure if this is because the old version has been out for so long, but on the metal of the old version, it's not as clear as it is on the new one. It looks a bit oxidized and it's actually not as clear on the old version, which you can see here. And on the new one, it's very nicely. It's a nice metal. You can see it looks as if it is a new metal. So which is very nice there. But I'm not sure if this is made that way or it's just so happened that the old version has oxidized over the time period. So here is the beam rifle for the two versions. As you can see, majority of them is actually the same. But the only difference that I've noticed is the little handle near the nozzle, which on the new one is slightly darker than it is on the old one. Aside from that, the orange light, I presume, near that handle is also brighter on the new one. Aside from these 2 points, basically I haven't noticed that any striking differences. So here it is on the shield. And again, the difference is very minor. It's also on the paint itself. On the new one, you can see that the gray part above the hole for the viewing is a little bit lighter on the new one, whereas the old one is slightly darker. And also on the two gold underneath that near the decals, on the new one it's slightly shinier that it reflects light, and the old one doesn't reflect as much, so it looks a bit matte on the gold. And then you have the gold streak right in the middle. On the old version, it's actually a little more towards yellow than it is on gold, whereas on the new one, it's actually a little more pale on the gold. That's a noticeable difference when you put the two together. Aside from that, it's the same for the red and also the white that's on it. And also the back colors are completely the same. And I don't notice any difference between the two. And here we have is the iconic knife that the Strike uses, the Armor Schneider. And I did look at it in great details, but I haven't noticed a single difference between the two. And finally, we have the base stand. Now, the bottom piece of the base stand is actually identically the same. You have on the left corner, you have is the SPS, which is the strike pack system. And on the left corner, you have is the GAT X105 strike, which is the model number of the Strike Gundam, as well as the little fine print underneath, which is the Gundam acronym written on there. But that's basically the same for the both of them. As for the remaining of the stand, there is another difference, which is the part that connects to the stand and mounted onto the bottom of the Gundam. That part is different as well. Clearly you can see that on the old one, it's a transparent part like I mentioned earlier in the video, and on the new one, it's a gray color and it's not transparent at all. But aside from that, the new one does also come with another piece that you can put on top of this mount and have that extra support that it needs. Now this piece right here actually mounts on top of the existing piece that you have on the stand. Now this piece you see right here, it's actually a lot common in the metal build nowadays, especially when you're playing with the Gundams. It will have this piece here, which actually in supporting the Gundam, increasing the stability instead of having it wobbling around, which the old one does have a tendency to do. So that's it on the comparison. Into the conclusion, obviously between the two, there is a very minor differences that I have noticed. And all these differences are so minor to the point that I've actually questioned myself, is this video even worth doing it halfway through it? Back to my conclusion is whether or not which one you should get. To be honest, for the first time I believe, it actually really doesn't matter. Because on the old version and the new version, the color difference is very minor, except for the decals that the old one has a little more than the new one. If you take that out of the equation, obviously there's pretty much no difference. And second of all, the functionality is the same. What the old one can do, the new one can, and vice versa. So there's actually no reason that I can think of other than Bandai wants to push this out to gain more money, as well as to give a chance for people who couldn't buy the Strike before now has a chance to. That's probably the only two reasons that I can think of that they renewed this. But aside from that, these two are nearly identically the same. For me personally, I like the old version better. The old one is a little better in terms of the blue. I like the blue, it's a little bit lighter. Unlike the new version, it's a little darker and a little more to the purple side. And the decals on the old one, it's more than the new one, which looks better in my opinion. So given these two reasoning, I would prefer the old version. So which do you guys like better? Do you guys like the old one with more decals? Or do you like the new ones, less decals, but have a slightly better paint job on the metallic color? So that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it and find this video useful. If you like, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more videos. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching.